Welcome back to Movies TV Mad, and of course you can follow me on Twitter, you lucky people, at Movies TV Mad. And welcome to Friday's edition of the Doctor Who Daily. Today we're talking about The Waters of Mars. The Waters of Mars is one of the most finest, most compelling pieces of television you will ever see. This is a showrunner in terms of RTD who's been on the show for 5 years. But he's coming to the end of his run, and he has got such freedom by this point that he can do whatever he wants. And he takes the Doctor to such a natural, progressive, dark point in his time. Now, all this week I've been talking about both versions of RTD's Doctor being forged in war. Now, the 10th Doctor was kind of made better by Rose Tyler. She brought him down, she watered him down a bit. His anger subsided, but his anger resurfaces because he can't handle the fact that not only has he lost all his friends, that he had to pretty much erase Donna Noble's mind. That has destroyed him. That is too much for him. So when he first arrives on Mars, he's going, oh yes, the red planet, and he's happy. So then he meets these people on this space station and he realizes their fate. He realizes who they are. Then his humor and his jovial nature stops because he knows he has to get the fuck off that base. But as he leaves the base, as he's about to leave the base, he can remember Donna and what happened and what he had to do. And that breaks him. That breaks him so much he decides to break his own rules, because this space station, these people on this space station are a fixed point in time. They have to die, they have to make this ultimate sacrifice because they could bring this virus to the planet Earth, which is what would happen, right? But the Doctor breaks his own rule, and let's talk about the fixed point. The fixed point in time. It's something he believes in, but it's actually a fact. There's some things you can't change, because if you change them, you change the relativity of the past, the present, and the future. And this is why the Doctor never messes around with fixed points in time. But this time, he does. He does break this very rule to change their fates, because he is a broken man. And I think it's very interesting when we look at Satan's Pit, that two-parter, and when he pretty much meets the metaphorical devil, he doesn't want to believe it. He doesn't believe in the devil, and he's having this whole kind of conversation saying, I don't believe in you. And I think that's amazing that the Doctor actually has a belief structure like some people have with their religion. There's things that religious people think is a fact and think that can't be possible. And there's also people who don't believe in religion who just can't believe that there's one all-powerful God out there that controls everything. So that's the term of the fixed point. It's why he rejects Captain Jack Harkness when Bad Wolf, aka Rose Tyler, makes him immortal. Whether Jack was already mortal before that point, immortal, is another conversation for another time. It's something that RTD has hinted at himself. Very exciting, but because of the blacklisting of Barrowman, will he ever be able to kind of fulfill that character's story? We don't know. I think with Bad Wolf Productions pretty much taking control of the Doctor Who narrative, I think RTD can bring Barrowman back, and I hope he does. But anyway, and so what he does within this episode is absolutely remarkable, because you see this intelligent man basically broken down very slowly within one episode, and he becomes the villain of the story, the Time Lord Victorious. And it's brilliant when it's kind of him pitted against the leader of this space station, and I forgot her name, played by a very good actor, but she is brilliant because she looks at him at the end of the episode and says, the Time Lord Victorious is wrong. And ultimately she kills herself to keep that fixed point. He's not in control. That's the moment he realizes he's gone too far, because he's not in control no matter what he does. He's always the most intelligent person in the room. One of the things I don't like about the Chibnall era is the Doctor doesn't come across as highly intelligent. The Doctor is very rarely faced with people of equal intelligence. Very rarely has he had a companion with equal intellect. One of the few people he comes across that are as equally intelligent as him are the Master, Davros, very highly intelligent people, or aliens, or whatever you want to frame them as. But the Doctor, in his everyday adventures, isn't really faced with people with equal intellect. But I think the leader of the space station is intelligent to understand what a fixed point in time is. And the Doctor totally loses it. But going back to the origins of the Doctor, even back to the Hartnell age, that moment where he responsibly allows Susan to go, to have a relationship, to have her own life, that must have been terrible for the Doctor, because at that point, Susan, his granddaughter, was his whole life, and he let her go. And from that moment on, he makes new friends, loses friends. This character, because he's immortal, is losing people all the time. I love what he says to Rose during school reunion. It's the curse of the Time Lord. You can spend the rest of your life with me, but I can't spend the rest of my life with you. That is the curse of immortality. And Davies was intelligent enough to give these two versions of the Doctor such nuance. People perceive the RTD era as fun, light, for children, but in fact it has a variety. It's not just about farting aliens. Now, the farting aliens are great. Do you mind not farting while I'm trying to save the world? One of the best lines in television history as far as I'm concerned. But that's what RTD can do. That's what RTD can give you. He gives you variety. He can give you serious adult content like he does in Midnight and Waters of the, Waters of Mars. Did I call it Waters of the Dead? I hope I didn't call it that. Anyway, it's called The Waters of Mars. It's the themes in The Waters of Mars are so good, because you see these people fighting for their lives and the Doctor attempting to change their fates, because he has the power to do so. He very rarely does this, but by this point he's not thinking logically, he's thinking emotionally. This is a Doctor, as I've discussed with you before, that is somewhat arrogant. This is a Doctor who loves this version of himself far too much. And as I discussed the other day, this is where the whole I don't want to go thing, comes from. I could do so much more. The frustration and the anger of having to say Wilfred, and pretty much meaning that he sacrifices this version of himself. He likes what he is now. And that's the arrogance, when you can't accept death. When you fear it. You fear change. You fear in becoming something else. He fears becoming Matt Smith's Doctor. So he's trying to avoid it. He sees it as a real death. A lot of people, during all of that, were saying, well, he's not actually going to die. He's just going to regenerate. But anyone who knows anything about the Doctor's regeneration understands that, yes, the Doctor is the same person, but he also changes. His personality changes. Going through a regeneration is very tough for a Doctor. We've seen it on multiple occasions. So it's not just a case of regenerating and still living. Something fundamental happens to the Doctor when they regenerate, when he or she regenerates. It was very compelling to see Capaldi's Doctor refuse to regenerate at first, and in other words, being willing to actually commit suicide. There was some really high stakes in that narrative. But in terms of the Waters of Mars, what's going on here is someone who has gone too far, as he admits at the end of the episode. His arrogance, his hubris, it's gone too far. And it is time for him to change, because he is unstoppable now. His grief over Donna is too much. Doing what he did really broke him, it really hurt him. And you know, that was a character that he met, a very flawed young woman who was angry at the world, threatening to sue everyone. Basically, in a lot of ways, Donna is a basic person who at that point probably watched Jeremy Kyle, X Factor. We're talking about quite a few years ago, aren't we? When these shows were big. And she changed. She became her own person. She calmed down because no one had really shown Donna love or respect before. Nobody respected Donna. That's why she was shouting at the world. So she meets this man called the Doctor, and he teaches her a better way, and she becomes a better person. But then, after all that human evolution, she's going to go back to what and who she was before. This is utterly devastating. Donna says it herself, as she knows what the Doctor's going to do to her. Please, Doctor, I don't want to go back. I thought I was going to stay with you forever. What's amazing about RTD? He's not one of these storytellers who's obsessed with happy endings. Because what happens is there's that moment on Journey's End when everyone is helping pilot the TARDIS. And he's got this whole family. And Sarah Jane says something very interesting. You know, you act like the loneliest man in the world, but you've got all these friends. But he hasn't, because he's about to lose them. Everyone's going to go and do their own thing. They don't even think about it. They all leave. And then he's with Donna, which is okay. But then he realizes if he doesn't erase her mind, she's going to die. So it's utterly devastating for him. It's utterly disruptive for him. And when he goes to the base on Mars, that is kind of then he's faced with the same thing again. So I just think it's amazing storytelling for a writer to give this character, you know, a character that some people deem is a character for children, whatever, right? But just because you're making television for families and children or even adults, it doesn't mean you can't give children adult themes. And you know, there's too many parents out there who want to protect their children from the world, and because when you overprotect children, they're not ready for the real world. Shows like Doctor Who and stories like The Waters of Mars can really show what can happen. Doctor Who becomes a villain. The Doctor becomes a villain in his own story. Some people deem the Doctor as a hero, but the Doctor's not always a hero. The Doctor's never been always a hero. The Doctor has made some very questionable moral decisions in all his incarnations and her incarnations. And that's important. He's an irony. He's not a traditional hero. Now, in a lot of ways, he became a bit more of a traditional hero in terms of Russell T Davies, but Russell T Davies would often pull the rug from underneath her. You know, the dismantling of Harriet Jones and pretty much taking her away from being Prime Minister. Obviously, the Doctor didn't realise by getting rid of her, there'll be someone much worse in power. But that was his friend. And from the moment she broke one of his rules, he did what he did to her. And so RTD was very clever about making the Doctor this light-hearted, fun guy, but then at times you saw his power and how he could turn on a sixpence against people who are his friends. He did it even to Rose now and again. And The Unquiet Dead, which I rewatched the other day, your safe world can change just like that. Rose is saying you can't use the cadavers, the dead bodies, it's wrong. And he's going, what, it's wrong, it's not polite? We can save this race. Ultimately, Rose is right in that debate and he's wrong, because basically those aliens were out for no good, but he couldn't see it. And let me explain to you why the Doctor couldn't see it. And it's bringing back that theme of someone being forged in war, where they mention the Time War, how they lost their bodies because of the Time War. The Doctor's guilt sets in straight away. And that's why he insists on helping them. So the Doctor does it all the time. The Doctor is a victim of his own tragedies. When you travel around, even if you just travel in a car and experience all these kind of things, some victories, some tragedies, it affects you as a person. And the Doctor is damaged because of the life he has chosen. The Doctor chose to leave Gallifrey and not be a surveyor, but to be someone who interacts with the universe at large. And when you do that, you change things. You change people's fates, sometimes for the worse, sometimes for the better. The reason I really like the Doctor is that he's not this straight shoe, character. The Doctor isn't this morally kind of straight character. The Doctor actually is a morally grey character. And the Doctor's quite a selfish character as well. I know I keep on saying he and the current Doctor's a she. It's difficult, right? I forget. You'll have to forgive me. But the Doctor is selfish. He takes people along for the ride. The Doctor changes those people's lives. Sometimes they die. Sometimes they get lost in space. But because the Doctor is lonely, the Doctor doesn't want to travel alone. He wants to share his adventures and his intellect. And the Doctor wants to share his or her knowledge. But it's selfish because once they go in that TARDIS, as he explained to Rose, the TARDIS translates languages in your brain. And Rose didn't like that. Rose was right. That is an immoral thing to do for your spaceship, right, your TARDIS, to mess with someone's head, even if it's to help you understand what's going on. So it's a different morality. So the Doctor isn't a perfect character. The Doctor is a flawed character. The problem with Chibnall's era and Jodie's era, they tried making her a flawless character. And the Doctor isn't a character that mostly apologises. Jodie's Doctor does a lot of apologising. The Doctor has always been a selfish character. And they tried to change it because she was a woman. And they wanted to create a flawless character because that's what the extreme left believe, that women are pure and good and men are evil. That's the black and white way they look at the genders and they look at the world. And it's somewhat problematic because when you come to Doctor Who, even James Bond's a hero, but he's not a flawless hero. And he acts in this grey world, this morally grey world. And that's one of the things I like about James Bond. And that's one of the things I like about the Doctor, that the Doctor isn't this perfect person. Now, I love Superman. He is a straight shoe character that's morally kind of pure. But the Doctor isn't that. The Doctor's a different character. The Doctor isn't a superhero. Now and again it seemed that RTD was trying to portray him as a superhero, but ultimately this character has so many facets. This is a multifaceted character, and that's what I like about the Doctor. And going back to the Waters of Mars, this is what you see. He's gone too far. It's too late for this Doctor in a way. That's what RTD is doing. That's what he's doing through the whole anger of not wanting to go. RTD knows exactly what he's doing. RTD started from Rose and ended with The End of Time, parts 1 and 2, and it all made sense to a character forged in war. The arc is there. Who is it? Is it Haribo Holmes or that account? Have you ever seen it? He explains the RTD era in its essence, and I love that guy's videos. I think that's what he's called anyway. And so the RTD era has a running theme to it, and mostly it's about a character forged in war. And ultimately, as we get further and further into the revival, he is becoming a better person, a less selfish person. But the Doctor, even Matt Smith's Doctor, makes a lot of mistakes because the Doctor gets lost in the Doctor's own jazz. Do you remember the A-Team when they used to say Hannibal's on the jazz now? That's the Doctor once his brain works, while he's working things out. Another great example of this, of course, is his obsession with finding out who Clara was. He's met a few versions of her. He needs to know. The Doctor loves the puzzle. It's a bit like Gregory House on the House TV show. House is driven by solving puzzles, and so is the Doctor. As he says to Clara, "You're the greatest mystery." And he wants to solve her. He's not interested. When they first meet, he's not interested in her as a person. He's not in love with her. He probably doesn't even like her that much. He's using her because she's a mystery to solve. Moffat gets it, what kind of character this is. He is a Sherlock Holmes. He is a Dr. Gregory House. And these characters are somewhat very selfish. They live for adventure and solving a mystery and putting things right for their own ego. The Doctor has a huge ego. Always has, always should, always will. And this is what you see really in The Waters of Mars leading up to the end of time, part 1 and 2, that this guy's ego is being shattered because ultimately maybe this version of the Doctor, the 10th Doctor, thinks that he will never have to regenerate again. But then at the end of, is it Planet of the Dead, the old psychic says to him, "He will knock 3 times, then you will die." I'm not sure if she says the "then you will die" thing. So then the Doctor realizes through this prophecy he's going to die. And what would you do if someone told you you were going to die? Well, it wouldn't sit with you very well, would it? No. What happens is he does the most human thing, even though he's an alien, tries to avoid his own death. But he can't. And I've explained to you before why. Even though he's immortal and he can regenerate, he doesn't want that. His arrogance is so huge. It's this huge bubble that's about to burst. He likes being the 10th Doctor too much. He has the looks, he has the suave, he has the je ne sais quoi, he has everything. He doesn't want to change. He likes himself far too much. And this is what becomes problematic with this Doctor. Not in terms of a narrative or enjoying him or loving Tennant's performance or loving what RTD is doing with him. He becomes problematic within his own story through his own hubris. This is what happens. And this is displayed in The Waters of Mars. I reckon different versions of the Doctor would have been able to leave and allow those people to die. Even with the deleting of Donna's memory, I think they would have been a little bit more withdrawn, but not this Doctor, because this Doctor is utterly passionate and he lives and breathes everything and everyone he meets. Every Doctor we've ever met is different. That's the whole point. That's the complexity about this character. He or she doesn't just regenerate. They become something new. They're still the same character, but they always become something new with every regeneration. And the best writers, the best people who have wrote this character, understand the Doctor. Because the Doctor is actually a very, very complicated character. And The Waters of Mars shows this. No time to die. I've got no time to die in the head. The End of Time shows this as well. At the end, at the very moment he's going to regenerate, he says those immortal words, "I don't want to go." Even though he knows he's still going to live and regenerate. What he maybe should have said, but RTD wanted to use the "I don't want to go" thing, because as I said the other day, it's talking about Russell, it's talking about the era, it's talking about David, but it's also talking about that Doctor. I don't want to go. I like myself. I don't want to change. And that is the very essence of what's going on on the Waters of Mars. And that's why I love it. Because it's subjective. It's Russell T Davies taking everything he's been doing for the past 5 years and exploding it. So even though this Doctor is a fun character, he's also deeply damaged. The Doctor's a bit like comedians. If you meet comedians in real life, most of them are not funny. The most funniest people in the world that I've ever met are not funny behind closed doors. In fact, a lot of them suffer with depression. And I think lots of people find that weird. Why? You're so funny and entertaining. Because if you're expected to be the life and soul all the time, what happens is it damages you when you're not doing that job. Because if you're always expected to be funny, it's difficult. There's a pressure to that. You can never be that normal person. And this is the problem with the Doctor. There's an expectation for the Doctor to be intelligent, to solve each mystery, to save the day. And the Doctor has pressure of being this person who's been living for so long and who's outlived most of his friends. And I think this is the fascinating vibe with this character. And I think sometimes Chibnall's kind of done that okay, especially in season 12. You see the loneliness of the Doctor finding out that everything she knows may be a lie. And I like that. That's the element of the Timeless Child arc that I really like. But we haven't seen what the plan is there, so I won't judge it until we do. And so basically RTD was creating this whole story. Now, interestingly, with Moffat, Moffat had two doctors, didn't he? How could I forget that? He had Matt Smith and he had Peter Capaldi. Now, these are two very different doctors. It's not like Eccleston and Tennant, who are really going through one whole arc, if you like, story arc. This is a bit different, where we see Matt Smith's Doctor. Matt Smith's Doctor isn't really damaged. He's hurt by losing Amy and Rory, mainly Amy. He slowly gets over that. It's different. It's really different. I mean, I think Smith's and Capaldi's Doctors are great for different reasons, but I just think that RTD is actually telling a whole story with two Doctors. His TARDIS doesn't change once. This is fascinating because Moffat kept on changing the design of the TARDIS, the look of the show, where RTD just stuck to that look. The show always felt like one show. It wasn't this ever-changing universe. Now, the excuses from Moffat changing things all the time so rapidly was it's an ever-changing universe. It's okay to be an ever-changing universe, but if you change too much, you destabilize your audience, you confuse your audience, and they're losing what they like too many times. So I would side with RTD here, where the TARDIS looks the same. And why should that TARDIS design change? It looks fantastic. So why change it? Where Moffat took the ever-changing universe thing too literally. And by the end of his run, the TARDIS had changed two or three times. Even Matt Smith's Doctor kept on changing what he was wearing at times, always keeping the bow tie, of course. But ultimately, even though you are part of watching a show where the actor changes all the time, regenerates, becomes a different person in personality, if you keep on changing the entire show constantly, as I say, it disorientates your audience. And people are saying, well, I understand this is an ever-changing universe, but I think you're just going too far with it. Where the difference between Moffat and Davies is Davies had consistency because he was literally telling a story. Yes, Tennant's Doctor is completely different to Eccleston's Doctor, but they're still going through the same vibe, the same thing. And it's so very, very interesting if you follow that whole arc through the RTD era that he does this. Now, I don't think that anyone should try and judge what he's done in the past like he's going to do the same things, but Davies is back for a reason, because he can appeal to every demographic. The mainstream audience, the hardcore fans, the hardcore New Who fans, and that's why he's back. Because no one else seems to have the qualities to do that. I think the other two showrunners we've had, in a way, have misunderstood Doctor Who, which is absolutely shocking to me, considering they're big fans too, and they understand the history of the show. I think it's only Davies that really understands, yes, the classic era was great, but if I tell a classic era Doctor Who in the modern days, then only the classic fans are going to watch. And then what's the point? Because if you don't bring the other members of the audience on board. What's the point? You're not getting the numbers, you're not and it is about money. But what Davies could do was modernise the show, but not fundamentally change it. This has been the Doctor Who Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives, and I will be back tomorrow with even more Doctor Who Daily. I really hope you're enjoying these Doctor Who discussions. Until tomorrow, I'll see you again very soon. Like, share, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Till then, goodbye.